It's difficult for me to recreate a mood and a style that my family engaged in so very many years ago. But it was a particular kind of household that it would be hard for anybody to imagine, because one was expected to do well in everything. And the violin was an example of that. And I remember much later, when I was already a pretty good player at age 11, 12, 13, my father would sometimes come home from the drugstore early because he still had a partner and he could get away from the store for a few moments, which was unusual enough. And the first thing he would do when he came home was say, "Play something for me." I was happy to oblige. I had a few little things to play, and I was proud of myself. And so I would play my best thing for him. And his reaction, and this is where it gets a little important to me, was, "Not as sweet as Elman. Go practice some more." So that is quintessential Jacob Iglitzin. Abby was definitely the prodigy of the family and a wonderful pianist from a very, very early age. She studied at the Bronx House Music School. I remember the name of one teacher, that was William Beller, taught at the Settlement School. And later on, she studied with Lisa Elman, Misha's sister. But that was in a more mature time of her piano playing. Abby performed regularly at the Bronx House Music School. All the kids did. And she probably did more than any because she had the most repertoire. And they wanted to show her off, performing with the orchestra and solo concerts, which I attended. My mom and I walked down there when Abby played. My mom was nervous as could be. And my sister was practicing 3, 4, 5, 6 hours a day. And there was a school called High School of Music and Art that Fiorello LaGuardia, a very famous, much beloved mayor of New York, had started. Music and art. It was started to give you a full academic program during the day, but by adding certain hours of class, you could also study an instrument or study art. All in the building on 135th Street and Convent Avenue, also near Harlem. And so my sister went there. It was a natural. She was so talented and well known for her playing. She got into music and art. And some years later, it seemed natural to follow all the talented kids in New York who were hoping to get into music and art high school. So I auditioned, and Isidore Russ said to me, "I love your sister. She's a wonderful pianist. We'll be happy to have you here." And I took my audition, and it was announced on the loudspeaker in my junior high school that 2 guys from the Bronx, Alan Iglitzin and Herbert Feldman, had gotten into music and art. And that was a thrill and a wonderful thing to achieve, because all the talents who later became all the string quartet players and all the orchestra players that peopled or populated the great music scene of America, not just New York. Every time after that, if a string quartet played, there were at least 2 or 3 music and art grads in it, and the symphony orchestras similarly. So I was destined to get through music and art somehow, having improved my playing and learned form and analysis, conducting, composition, theory, and orchestra ensemble. They stuck a viola in my hands because I was only playing violin. If you were a violinist, you had to play 1 term, as we called it, of viola, just to be familiar with it. So you sat in a room with a bunch of other kids. You had never seen or held a viola. They brought one in, sat you down, and you learned the viola by playing a Brandenburg concerto and learning the clef as you sat there, somehow. So that was my only exposure to viola. I realized later that I had always wanted to be a quartet player, and even while in high school, I formed a quartet called the Metropolitan String Quartet. And we actually printed up a card and took an ad someplace and got a gig, as the kids say today, in a girls' private school on Fifth Avenue, the real Fifth Avenue, in Manhattan. And we played a concert there as the Metropolitan String Quartet. I was playing second violin. Well, music and art was a wonderful point in my life and a unique place. All apart from the fact that my sister had cut a path already of glory, and I walked right into the Iglitzin family, was on a continuum and respected by the people who were there already, who loved my sister and showed me that love, and I tried to live up to that. So you managed to come out with an academic diploma, having learned all the musical things on top of it, with the best young musicians that were around New York at that time. 3 extra 40-minute periods. Then I turned around, in spite of that, went straight to the drugstore. Well, wonderful, talented, and interesting kids attended Music and Art High School. One of them was Lynn Bressler, whose birthday happened to be exactly the same day, month, and year as mine. So that when her colleagues sang happy birthday to her in a class, then my colleagues all sang happy birthday to me. Everybody thought it was a joke, but it was true. We shared that birthday, and we started what they called in those days going together, and eventually got pinned with my fraternity pin. And so we were going steady in high school, and then she went off to Barnard College. I had a very good friend from Music and Art High School by the name of Bill Salinger. He urged me to stay in music for music and art. And he had heard that Long Island University was trying to build up a music program. And he was something of a violinist, violist himself. And he was going down there to take an audition. And he said, "Alan, why don't you come with me? They're trying to build up this department. Let's try out. Let me know what happens." So we went down together, played for this doofus who was starting an orchestra and a music program down there, and both got offered scholarships to Long Island University. So that got me into college on probation. But I went in, I played concertmaster of the school orchestra. They were trying to build up a music program down there. So I benefit, had a little scholarship, played in the orchestra. Did not want to go to Juilliard where all my colleagues went, because to me they were all kinds of weird kids who only breathed and talked and thought music. I was far from that. I was more interested in playing softball, and I had started boxing by this time already. To much to the dismay and shock of my parents, who of course thought my hands would be wrecked forever, or I would be killed necessarily in the ring. I got a general degree only for music and art, not what was called an academic high school degree, because I was, as always in my life, extremely willful. I would only do an assignment if I felt like doing it. I would only take a test if I felt like taking it. And that's not the way to get through and get a degree. That gives you some idea of what a scholar I wasn't. But in college, I got interested in things which served me well for the rest of my life. I had a wonderful American lit teacher, Joe Shipman, and he inspired me to go further in that direction. I even thought of being a college professor of literature at that time. A futile thought, because to do that you had to get a PhD. In no way was I going to go and stay in school to get a PhD, but literature really appealed to me. I read voraciously from that time on through my entire life. Psychology, sociology, and literature. I failed Spanish. I got a 9 on a test in Spanish out of 100. That's pretty bad. I had to get certain credits to graduate from college, which I barely did. I got out, I managed to make it just in time to get married a couple of weeks later.